Why would I do a CD called Confessions of a Muslim Comedian? And that was the idea of bringing entertainment to Muslims, for Muslims, about Muslims, but for everybody.
I got Dean in my life. Who is Dean? But you bring Dean around here.
You know how Muslims get you all hyped up? And he said, brother, you ready to be Muslim? I said, yeah. He said, you know what that means? I said, tell me, brother. He said, you ready to give up the swine? I said, yes, sir. I'm giving up the swine. He said, are you ready to give up the alcohol? I said, yes, sir. I'm ready to give up the alcohol. He said, you ready to give up the women? I said, yes, sir. I'm ready to give up the alcohol. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Miles, host of the SOS, the ShOUT Show. Hope you're having a fabulous Saturday. Well, brothers and sisters, we've been threading this thing for the last couple months, and I am more than happy to say that we have our brother, Omar Karim. He's in the queue waiting to come on. This is our first Saturday Spotlight after our hiatus. All praises due for that. Listen, we have a great show, first of all. And I'll be up front. You know, we're working on some audio things. We want to make sure that when Brother Omar comes on here, you hear him crystal clear. He's locked in, and we don't have any other issues abound with this broadcast. Let me even throw it out this way, brothers and sisters. Outside of having Omar on the show, it's a particularly pleasure of mine. It's my honor to have the brother on the show. I get a chance to actually highlight him. This is his brand, if you will. Bannock Ventures. And what I wanted to make sure that everybody understood was this thing, that we need to support not just Black businesses, Black Muslim businesses. We have to provide groundwork and a framework for Black entrepreneurship all together. Now, full stop, full disclosure, Omar is like my little brother. But like a big brother looks at his little brother and says, man, he is doing work. That's exactly what you're going to see on the show today. So while he is my little brother, he's about to be your brother too, for the things that he's doing in terms of real estate development, commercial, residential, but also what he does in terms of the philanthropy part of this business. You know, it's great to make a lot of money, but it's interesting to see how people apply their money around the community to make the communities better. You know, I did my homework on this young man before I ever kicked him around. I met him several years ago at a thing called Community Life Forward. It was supposed to be the launch for the WD community, WD Muhammad community, and we just clicked after that. You know, he and I have had tons of lunches, tons of discussions, just good vibes. And for those who don't know, if you ever saw Love Supreme, The Anatomy of Gratitude, one of the reasons you got to see it was because this brother put his support and his finances behind that project. He was the secret EP of that project. So what you're going to hear today, brothers and sisters, is we're going to break it down. It's going to be a little bit like music, if you will. Every great hit song has something in common with every hit song. It has to do with structure. It goes verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. So verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. When we start talking about Omar's space here, I had to do a little bit of homework because it's not just what he's done lately, but we had to go back because his verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out goes all the way back to Detroit, Michigan. It goes all the way back to his parents who started in the first with the NOI. And they transitioned to the WD Muhammad community. And it's interesting to see how they held these chords together to not only produce Omar, but his brothers, his sisters were doing amazing things in their particular lines of work. And I thought, brothers and sisters, this would be a really exciting time to celebrate this, to talk about it, to get some information. Because a lot of people don't understand what it is that's actually going on in the Washington, D.C. area. And they should know what's going on in the Washington, D.C. area. So I'm not going to talk this thing to death. We're blessed to have him for our Saturday Spotlight. I know, and you know, that an hour isn't long enough, but we're going to try and do it, and we're going to actually flip it around. We're going to try and make this thing a hit song. First chorus, bridge, chorus, out. Satana, let's start this show. right, everybody, we're back. So first of all, I want to make sure that everybody is tuned into the show. I appreciate it. This is our first Saturday Spotlight back. So we're going to be doing some things different in terms of format, some of the questions that are asked, some of the flow of the conversation. But it's all to your benefit. It's all to your benefit. It's not like I would do these things in error just to be flippant. I really feel like there's a format here, and we're blessed to have our brother on the show. Let's give a shout out to our folks. I know some folks will be coming on early. Shout out Show family, Reed, Brother Altaf, Rashid, JT. I want to give you a shout out. Sister Ika all the way from Indonesia, Sister Naima from Detroit. Of course, Mary Moss, Mama Son, she's on the queue today. We have so many people who are supporter of this show, and we're going to make sure that this show is something special. We're going to make sure that it gets out to the correct people. So let me start this out by saying Omar Karim, and that's why I said verse chorus, bridge chorus out, because he's from Motown. He's from Motown, Detroit. And Detroit had a way of doing things outside of music that really established some rubrics for lifestyle. You know, they used to say that originally Motown was supposed to be the sound of Black America, and they changed the term to the term was it's the sound of Young America. And I want to say that Omar is the sound of Business America in our community, brothers and sisters. So I want to make sure that we switch this thing around and we ask some questions that have some meaning. So anybody who's actually thought about being an entrepreneur, getting into real estate development, I'm talking about commercial, residential. I mean, talking about the whole space of how you affect something. This is the interview you want to see. Now, let me throw this out too. You know, I always think about real estate in this context, a blue ocean strategy. Every building that he builds is a blue ocean strategy. And it really comes from the fact that you can create a whole lot of things in the world, but you can't create more land. You can only be creative with how you use it. So, brothers and sisters, let's not delay this any further. Let's get our show started. Let's welcome to the Shout Out Show, our Saturday Spotlight, Omar Karim. What's going on, beloved? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. How are you and how are your amazing audience?
We getting there, brother. We getting there. This is our first Saturday Spotlight from hiatus, but this is going to be a hot one because, you know, we get to rebroadcast this. I'm really excited, man. So listen, let's start with the building blocks. You're a builder. Every builder has you got to lay a foundation. Tell us about that foundation in Detroit, mom and dad. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small enclave in the middle of Detroit called Highland Park. It's 4 or 5 square miles. You know, my mom told us it was 5 of us. And then my baby sister was born some years later. So growing up in a household with 5 or 6 children in the 80s, if anybody thought that the Reagan time were good, they were not in Detroit. It was a pretty tough time. But my mom told us we were going to be scientists and engineers. And I used to, and so she opened a school. She called it the High Tech Learning and Development Center. And she wrote a grant and got 6 Apple IIe computers in like 1984, which was amazing. And she told everybody at the school in the middle of Detroit where people were selling cocaine and crack and everything else that we were going to be scientists and engineers. And I used to think to myself that, like, Mom, we don't know any scientists or engineers. There's nobody next door to us who went to college, right? People worked at Ford or Chrysler or GM, but there's definitely no engineers that we knew. And but she put that in our mind. And as a result, 4 of her children now have engineering degrees, and 3 of us went on to law school, and 1 has an MBA from Wharton. So that's it.
I would say it worked out pretty well.
It did. Alhamdulillah.
So what is that foundation, man? You're one of the very few brothers whose parents was in the first, coming to the second, making that transition, because a lot of people don't understand what you just said about your mom really encompasses a lot about what that whole movement was. Right. In terms of entrepreneurial spirit, a readjustment and alignment in terms of how we approach the education. You know, we talk about Sister Claire Muhammad School, but we're not talking about what your mom just did. what your mom did at that point in time with little, there's like you said, there's no scientists or engineers around, but it's the provocation that you can create them. You can design a space for them. And I think that, that carries over a lot to what you do in terms of Banneker Ventures. So what do you think that is? When I say, what do you think that is? What do you think drove your mom to do that?
Well, I mean, of course, coming up in the Nation of Islam and the Black Power movement of the 60s and the love for self, that clearly was the impetus of what they were doing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and what birthed me in 1974, and seeing Elijah Muhammad and all of the other, Sister Clara Muhammad, who I went to the Clara Muhammad School in the first grade, and so many of those giants in that day. And what we're doing now, and they had nothing, right? They didn't have federal contracts and local contracts and capital stacks. They had pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters, and was able to really do some amazing things. And what we're doing today, it's simply a reflection of building on that. So building these buildings and building people and investing in people and trying to replicate and improve on what their vision was.
Would you say that this was a family philosophy? Because you talked about your brothers and your sisters. Was it a philosophy? It's sort of like you guys, sort of like the entrepreneurial Jacksons, if you will.
You know what? We didn't see it as kind of the entrepreneurial business people, although my parents were in business. And, they were probably some of the most successful leaders in the Nation of Islam. My dad was a minister in the nation in the 60s and 70s. But I never looked at it as a business thing because we really never had any money, right? So my gas got cut off at times. The water got cut off, right? But they owned a restaurant, right? And, ran a school, owned a school. But we didn't have money, right? I used to get my tennis shoes from the grocery store. I don't know what they did in DC, but we ate black.
I think the thing though, Omar, is you hit on something. They did business. It's not a matter of you made a lot of money or it was successful.
Yeah.
It's the presence.
Teach on
it's the presence that there is something there. We work in spaces as businessmen, entrepreneurs. We say things like the first 5 years is not going to make any money. First 6 years is not going to make me money. And that's like business lingo. That's what we understand. But I think, what you're talking about is they have businesses, but it's so much of setting a precedent.
Yes.
So many businesses weren't making money, but setting a precedent, the restaurants. I mean, we've all been through that situation. Do I eat or do I wash my clothes and all those type of things? You make those financial decisions, but I think the thing that is really important is that they're instilling that in the children very early.
I preach this. Reflecting on what you just said, I think is super heavy. I had not sat down and thought about it like that. I thought my parents were building a nation. So every time we asked my mom, "Hey, Mom, what time is it?" She used to say nation time. And I still tell our children that. And so 40 years later, I'm 47 now, to connect what you just said, they were entrepreneurs. They were business people. They owned an apartment building, right? So I remember going and putting plastic up in the tenants' apartments when it was some Detroit cold weather. But I didn't connect it because we were putting plastic up at our own crib or whatever, right? So you're absolutely 100% right. I think that the apartment building next to the masjid that they ran and operated was about a 20 or 30 unit building. And prior to today, I had not had thought about that in 20 years. So I appreciate you, bringing that out.
I mean, the thing is, the foray that, that we had back in the day was just the overall idea. It's like, man, we got to build something. Like there's no reason for this thing not to be built. We have to make sure that this thing works. You know what I mean? One of the creeds of being a teacher, when I'll get into that with you as well. One of the creeds of being a teacher is you're not here to make money. Your investment is your students, and your students hopefully will make enough so they can invest in somebody else. And it's not necessarily money, but it is that spirit,
Yes,
you know.
sir.
And I think that's a thing too. So you're in Detroit, you're going through grade school, you get to high school, you start thinking about college. What are you thinking about college now?
So my mom died of cancer in '87 when I was in the 8th grade. And after she passed, we all went down to Memphis where my dad had grew up. And so it was 6 of us, but my brother just graduated and went to the Air Force Academy. And then so 5 of us moved down to Memphis, and where we, matriculated through junior high school and high school. And I was thinking about, any kid growing up really in Detroit, you're thinking about University of Michigan, you're thinking about the Fab Five, right? And playing basketball or whatever, people think if they're going to go to college. And I just so happened to have, a brother who was a year ahead of me, and he went to Howard. I never heard of Howard in my life because my mom had been pushing MIT to us because we were going to be scientists and engineers. I didn't know where. I figured MIT was in Massachusetts, but I never visited or anything like that. But my brother went to Howard a year before me. I had an opportunity to go visit Howard my senior year, and then it was a wrap. I said, I'm going to the Mecca. I'm going to Washington, D.C. at Howard.
Yeah, my stomping grounds. It's interesting. My mom and my aunt both wound up at Howard University, and my aunt actually graduated Howard Law. So now you're in Howard. You're studying engineering, right? You graduate. You get your degree in engineering. What was the move to law school?
So engineering was the hardest thing your little brother ever did. It was hard. My mom didn't tell me it was going to be that hard, right? I wound up being Mr. School of Engineering, full academic scholarship, but it was hard and I didn't really like it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue.
No, but I did. I was an advocate on the yard, and I was a member of the board of trustees for 2 years as a student, and I liked advocacy. And I thought
you're very active. I saw that you're very active.
I thought I would be Malcolm X with a law degree, and so I said, "Look, let me go to law school." And I could, by the time my senior year, I could write pretty well, and decided to go become an attorney. And so I went over to Howard Law School, which was not far from the main campus.
So you finish Howard Law School, you get your law degree, you go to New York.
I sold out. I sold out. I had an opportunity.
It's not selling out. It's progression.
Okay, there you go.
We're gonna let you fill in the blanks, but you go from DC, you go to this law firm up in New York.
Yeah.
What happens?
So I'm sitting in my first year law class, and somebody was looking at a sheet of paper about a law firm that was coming to interview at Howard, and it had all the salaries on it at that time. And I said, yo, let me check out that sheet of paper. And the young lady showed me, and she said their interns were getting $1,667 a week for the summer. I said, what? What law firm? Where's this place at? I got to get an interview. So by hook or crook, I was able to get an interview. And then apparently they liked me. They hired me to become an associate in a corporate department in a big New York law firm in the middle of Manhattan on 55th and 3rd, where I represented public and privately traded companies, particularly doing mutual fund work. So really large financial institutions, banks, and other regulated, SEC regulated financial institutions, and did that for about nearly 4 years.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're there 4 years. What's something's percolating in your mind? You're not going to stay there. So what is going on in your mind, Omar? Like, you're in this office. Let me frame this out. Technically, for anybody watching, particularly Black folk, Omar's winning at this point. You're doing well.
That's
This
so
is
true.
not McDonald's. I want to be on fries. I want to be on the register.
That's
You, you are winning right now.
Yeah,
They like you, and they are paying you to do a service.
you're absolutely right, Preach. So when I started at 87,000, and then by the time I was full time, salaries had jumped up to 125. By my fourth year, we were making 165,000 a year, and that was heaven for me. I said, "Oh my God!" Like nobody in my family, I didn't have to worry about my gas getting cut off. Right, my lights didn't have to get cut off. Then could go to any place in the country and get me a pair of tennis shoes. Didn't have to get my shoes from the grocery store anymore. Right?
It was Nathan time all the time.
It was it was it was cool. You know, financially we were doing okay. But just like engineering, I didn't really like doing that. I didn't like billing every, per hour. And I didn't like financial services law in particular. And so some of my buddies in DC were buying real estate. They were, using the NACA program. NACA is the program. It's like a first time home buyers program. Mm-hmm. So they started buying 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units in DC. And I was like, wow, I'm as smart as them. I could probably do that as well. So, unbeknownst to me, I said, all right, well, I'm in New York, they're in DC. And so I tried to do that in New York. And lo and behold, I wrote myself some goals down in 2000, and I think it was 2002. Yeah. I said, let me go do that. And I wind up closing on 2 brownstones, one in Harlem on 123rd and Lenox, and one in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where Biggie Smalls grew up. And that got me, really thinking about entrepreneurship from there.
So what was the philosophy about buying buildings, about building? Now you've gone from engineering to law. Now you're in real estate development. And I don't want to say this the flipping stage, but you're beginning to look at it holistically, like, wait a minute. There's a whole commerce to this thing. There's another level other than I'm going to buy and sell.
It wasn't really real estate or buying and selling. It was I'm paying all of this rent to some, I think the guy's name was D'Agostino in Brooklyn. And my new wife and I were paying a ton of rent, and we didn't like paying rent. And my buddies were buying 4-unit buildings, and they were living rent free because they were renting out 3 of the units, and they lived in one of the units. And it was just a basic, simple economics at that point. Okay, can I buy a building? I didn't think about equity. We didn't think about how valuable that building is. And today that building is probably about $8 million. I bought it for $650,000, give or take, I think it was 500 and something thousand back in 2002. And so, we thought about that, and then we bought those 2, and then we sold those 2 about a year later. And then we said, hey, okay, if we could do that, can we buy the block? Because at that time, 123rd and Lenox was tough. It's a lot of dilapidated buildings, and, tried to do that for a couple of months and really didn't know anybody, didn't know any financial folks, any architects, any engineers, didn't have any connections to the real estate community in New York. And I read Essence magazine and happened to run across this young woman by the name of Pamela Bundy in Washington. And
I was going to get to that. Yes, you wound up in DC with the Bundy Development Corporation. Your general counsel.
That's right.
Big things in terms of their sales and their transactions in terms of real estate. How does that happen? You're telling me you read something. I didn't know you read something. I thought it might have been a thing where you open up. Oh, you applied, but you
nope. I read about the woman in Essence magazine, and I told my wife about her, and my wife was like, "Look, why don't you just call her?" So I pick up the phone. Before I picked up the phone, I wrote a list of stuff. I said, if I reach this lady, I'm going to tell her all the things that I could do for her. And I want to come work for her for free because I want to learn what she's doing. And
you work for free. You didn't tell me that.
I offered to work for free. I'll tell you about that. So I picked up the phone. They connected me to her. And I said, hey, Ms. Bundy, my name is such and such. I'm a lawyer. Worked for a big New York law firm. I started my own little company. I want to come work for you for free. I'll be your general counsel. I'll run your deals. I'll go get coffee, go get your dry cleaners, do all of those things. Just let me come work a couple of days a week for free for you. And she said, well, let me think about it and I'll call you back. And I thought she was going to take a couple of days. I think she called me back the same day. She said, yep, I thought about it. And the answer is no. I was like,
I didn't know it was going to go that route.
She told me no. I said, okay, no. All right, that's fine. And so she spoke on a panel at Howard in the engineering building some months later. And I raised my hand and I was like, Miss Bundy, I'm still out here. Look, I'd love to come work for you. And I stalked her in a non-Me Too type manner. And I was actually in New York trying to sell our property in Harlem. And she called me one day. She said, Omar, where are you? I said, I'm in Harlem. She said, well, when you're back in DC, come see me. So I came to see her and she hired me and paid me $400 a week. Now I was getting paid $5,000 a week as a lawyer. And she offered me $400 a week. And I was so grateful because at that point, now I could learn how to do real estate development from a large scale. I could work on 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. She was working on $1 billion project and she would let me run some of these projects. So it was a really grateful opportunity to that I got with BDC.
Now, when you say run some of the projects, can you clear that up for some of the viewers? What does that entail?
Very good question. So she let me run a project that was a ground up 30-unit condo deal in the Chinatown neighborhood of DC. It was the first new construction multifamily project at that time back in 2003, 2004. And so I was a development manager. What does that mean? That means hiring the general contractor, managing the architects, managing the lawyers. The site used to be a parking lot. So I typed up a flyer, took the flyers, printed them out, took the flyers to the parking lot, put them on people's cars to say, today is your last day to park on this site because we're about to start construction. So everything from that to managing the construction, going out to the job site, seeing concrete being poured. Once construction is complete, managing punch lists, walking through the buildings with the new condo owners, turning over their keys, dealing with everything that's involved from a new construction development project. And then managing sales, working with her broker and the brokerage firm who she hired to sell that. And then every single month we used to have to do draws with the bank. And so I would be preparing the draws and say, write down everything that got spent that month, put together the backup paperwork, submit that, and then say, okay, bank, fund Miss Bundy's account.
Wow. So it was all soup to nuts.
Soup to nuts. In addition to being a lawyer, so I used to beat up on some of the bad people who were doing some weren't performing. And so I would have to bring out my lawyer skills to try to keep them sharp. That was interesting. Yeah.
Oh, don't hurt him, Hammer. Don't hurt him. So you're there. And as I was going through all of this, the move from New York you're a lawyer, you come down to DC. Thank you for filling in the blanks because I really want to know how you got down with BDC. But then you open your own shop. Now, before I let you go on this, here's what I'm thinking, that you open your own shop, but you're somewhat in competition with the lady you just work with. And I'm like, yeah, that's a man of faith. He truly believes. How is that? I mean, was she supportive in you going out and putting up your own shingle, or? Because I know how people are when you make, it's like the mafia. When you're making money for the mafia, they love you. But you want to start your own family, it ain't going to happen. So, and in DC, brothers, this is real estate is cutthroat. And especially during that time in 2000, you still had Marion Barry, who was still lurking around. So, you know what I'm saying? These things were incredible jumps, if you will. So you're going to hang your own shingle. What is that like? Like, you have to go home and tell your wife, you know what? We just left New York. I just took this big pay cut. Now this. Go ahead.
Yeah. Miss Bundy was not happy about me leaving. and you know, immediately sent me a cease and desist letter, and you know, told me not to be competing with her, and we had to deal with that. And but I, you know, she gave me a huge opportunity. I have nothing but love for that amazing, you know, super talented sister who was doing some trailblazing things back then. And we went out, and it was a leap of faith, right? We didn't have any money. I was able to buy a little single family house that I literally refinanced on the last day that I was employed. So they checked my employment the last day that I was at Bundy.
Wow.
And took a couple of dollars out of that property to make sure that my wife didn't divorce me, and that I could pay the light bills and the rent, you know, for the next year. And we went out and we purchased and acquired, put an offer on a headquarters building, a national headquarters building. And I was pretty bold at the time and said, why don't we just buy a big office building and tear it down and do some condos, similar to what I was doing with Miss Bundy. And we were successful at getting the building under contract and acquiring it, getting Fannie Mae to put in some equity on the deal, getting Wells Fargo to put some debt on it, finding a joint venture partner. And it's a long story with that project, and you know, just blocks outside of the district.
Okay, well, we're going to take just a minute because I want to jump into the next project. And this one was just recent. So I'm going to cue up Satana. I'm going to ask you about this next project. And you've been talking about this for a minute, but it's going to go ahead and go full screen on it. We'll be right back. Please take a look at this right now. Satana, let's go ahead and bring him in. Volume. All right, Omar. Sorry about that, brother. We had a little bit of some sound issues. Apologies on that. We try to run that sometimes, and it happens. Apologies. But for anybody who wants to see it, I will post it again on another segment. In fact, Omar, with your permission, I would like to highlight that section on some of the other shows that we're having. Is that okay with you?
That's great.
Yeah, I just want people to. It's very number one. It's a very important piece, a very emotional piece for anybody who is from the DC area, who has grown up in Southeast Washington, that's associated with Masjid Muhammad on the northwest side. You know, that groundbreaking was phenomenal. And we talked earlier about that sound of Motown, right? That verse, chorus, bridge, chorus out. And I was with you, brother Omar, when you started talking about the Clara. So it's sort of like metaphysics, transformational to have a conversation and then see you breaking ground. And I want to give a shout out for my niece who gave an incredible recitation at the beginning of the show. Got to shout her out. I hope you guys don't mind. But we want to go ahead and talk about how that kind of thing comes together. Because you talk about the first thing you did, what I think was interesting, that you and your wife decided you're going to have a national headquarters, not even really a house. You're going to have a national headquarters. You're going to tear a spot down and build it up. Now, let me tell you something. That sounds very bold. It sounds very courageous. But it's got to be scary, man. It's got to be scary because the process doesn't happen overnight. And Omar, what I'd like for you to do is kind of talk. Let's give a little pep talk to some people. What would you tell them about real estate development? Because a lot of times our folks have turned out that, you know, we'll buy a building, it doesn't flip in the next 15 minutes, and we're not in it for the long haul. And in some regards, we're not really oriented to understand that this is part of a process. You know, the railroad didn't get built in a day. It was tracks. It was understanding. It was purchasing of land. It was the labor, the later tracks, ties. You know, there's a whole lot of components to this. So when we're talking about the Clara, kind of educate us a little bit. Where does it start that you have this idea about the Clara?
So kind of before the Clara, just in real estate, our industry, people say the real estate industry is a get rich slow business.
Yeah.
Get rich slow business. And if you believe in that, which I believe in it, you can create wealth for your community, for your masjids, for your faith-based organizations, for, you know, your families. But it'll take some time. I was with someone a couple of months ago in Idaho, and the lady had just refinanced her portfolio out here for nearly $1 billion. And she said her and her husband never sold, right? Almost $1 billion. Like, just think about that, right? So I think she's the largest apartment owner in the county. And to just reflect on that. And this lady is about 80 years old, right? So they've been in it for 50 years. So that's what I want to just really encourage your audience and our community to think about something. And that's what I've really been thinking about over the last couple of months. You know, if I would have thought, you know, most people think they could do more in a year than they can, but they don't think that they could do enough, right? In 5 years or 10 years. And so I want to encourage people to really have a 5, 10, or even 50-year viewpoint on things, particularly related to business and particularly related to real estate. So the Clara project, which is an 81-unit project in the Anacostia neighborhood of DC, came about as a result of a meeting that I had with the board of directors of the Masjid Muhammad, and they were about to cut a deal with a regional nonprofit, and somebody recommended that they talk to us before they do that. We had a meeting, you know, we discussed what they were trying to do, and we were able to cut a deal that was significantly more, you know, better for the masjid and better for the community. And that was about 3 years ago. And 36 months later, we're breaking ground. They have been working on this project for over 10 years. And we immediately, issued a letter of intent for them, and then put together an operating agreement, applied for financing, got awarded that financing, finished up the drawings, got permits, right, and closed on this $47 million transaction on Wednesday, September the 29th.
The thing that the thing that really, really resonated when I watched the video. Well, I didn't watch the video. Let me give myself some credit. I watched the live stream. I was like, I want to see it happening live. And the thing was, man, you've always kept, and let's say Bannock Ventures. I'm standing in front of Bannock Ventures right here. The thing I like about Bannock Ventures, man, y'all are silent but deadly. You move with a certain type of precision that we do need, that we need to see, and we need to. For you guys that don't know, one time Omar and I were hanging out. I was in DC. Omar said, "Come to this meeting with me." And we wind up over at some church, and listening to Omar talk to them about how they were doing faith-based real estate, for lack of a better word, how they were helping people develop land, churches that have had land for God knows how many years, never had the amount of money, the revenue to build up, to build something. He's telling them about this program. And Omar, I think the thing also that needs to be said is you've done a heck of a job in terms of introducing or reintroducing or streamlining the idea of how we need to network, how we need to go out and find these pockets of money, these grants. You got to go out and find these loans because the money is out there.
Yeah.
The science is, how do you get to the money?
Look, affordable housing is mainly, developed by white nonprofits and white developers in the country. And because we just don't know, right? So we need to understand, our community needs to know. Affordable housing is financed through low-income housing tax credit equity that's in the country. And that means that these municipalities have tax credits. They'll award you tax credits. You take those tax credits, sell them to banks and other institutions, and they'll cut you a check for 40% of the cost of the project. And then you go out and get some other soft loans as well as senior loans and to represent the projected income from your rents. And there you go. You have a project. It's not easy. The closing that we did a couple of weeks ago was one of the most challenging projects that we've ever had for a lot of different reasons, but it can get done, and people are getting it done all over the country, and it can really create wealth for our communities. And it's just really interesting about the Clara project. We have more pastors and reverends at that groundbreaking than imams who were there, which were pretty interesting because we do a lot of work with the faith-based community in the district, and are developing a project with a church a block from the Clara project in Anacostia, which is pretty amazing.
I think but I think the thing, man, is like, let me give some shine to mom. You give some shine to Mama Karim. It was that whole idea is it's if you don't see it, you develop it. And there's a common saying, if you build it, they will come. But the hustlers used to say, if you build it right, they will come back. And so I like the fact that, there is, of course, this Claire Muhammad project that's for our community, but other people are looking. And I'm like, that is effective building. That is the most effective network that you could have in the concept that people see you building and they see an edifice going up. There's anticipation. There's an emotional attachment to growth. And so that was one of the things about the Clara, and you and I have talked about the Clara project in some detail, not all detail, just the overall aspect of how it came to be and things like that. And it's like, where's our next Clara going to be? Where's our next Clara going to be? I think, and then we're going to come back to the Clara, but I think one of Omar's outside of the next Clara project is the college track program, of which he's a board member. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you get involved with the college track program? Because I think it's fascinating. I went on there website spent some time, and the whole idea of how they're trying to develop young people to go to college, to come out and have certain proficiencies, not be dragged down by student loans, but reintroducing this whole culture of education, intellectualism moving forward. Can you tell us about that? How'd you get involved with them?
Sure. So, College Track is a program that was created about 25 years ago in California, in the Bay Area. And it's one of the primary purposes is really to help underprivileged, youth, primarily Black and brown children, taking them from the 8th grade through college graduation. And a couple of years ago, the organization expanded to the DC metropolitan area and opened a college track site in a pretty tough neighborhood in Prince George's County called Suitland, Maryland, where Kevin Durant is from. And Kevin Durant partnered with the organization and committed to funding the program to the tune of $10 million to open the Kevin Durant Center, which is an amazing thing in and of itself. And he's such a kind and generous, professional and philanthropist. And then a couple of months later, the Award 8 site opened up in the district. And so we got involved a few years prior to College Track coming out to the DC metropolitan area. We heard about it. We got involved in it. And currently I serve as the co-chair of the regional board and a member of the national board of directors of the organization.
So now you're building young minds, brother. You're building young futures. Well, yeah. I like that. And I think the thing I did a little reading, some past reading about the Claire. What I really liked about the Claire, and this is just totally off the radar, but the Claire is being built right next to a spot that you're building that emphasizes affordable housing for teachers in the Washington, D.C. area.
That's right. Yeah. We that's another project that we recently were awarded this past spring. It's 180 units right at the Congress Heights Metro, probably about a 5-minute drive down the block. And we're super excited to be part of the mayor's vision to develop 36,000 units of housing, with 12,000 of those being affordable by 2025. So it's a big effort to build as much affordable housing as we can in the district, because there's so many others who are focusing on, market rate housing and high-end housing in the district. But, we're committed to solving the affordable housing problem. And that's why we decided to make the Clara 100% affordable. And that's why we decided to make, our project at the Congress Heights Metro 100% affordable, and many other projects that we're working on. We're working on some deeply affordable preservation and development projects.
Okay, that's beautiful. Now let's get to the capitalist side of me. What projects are you building that, hey, we're trying to make some money?
So for people who don't know, you have billionaires in the country who develop affordable housing. So this is not a philanthropic thing. We have a Banneker Foundation where we give money and do good things in the community. But our development work, there is some philanthropic aspects of what we do, but it's mainly a for-profit entity. So in the affordable space, there's significant fees and that you generate off of developing affordable housing. And so the Rouse Company, for example, major, developer in the country, they started off by developing affordable housing. And so there's many other development firms, including ours, that do both develop affordable as well as workforce and market rate. And both of them can be highly profitable.
Well, I think the thing, and the reason I said that is I really want people to understand that there are different levels, number one, but they're both levels where it can be profitable.
That's right.
It's not free work by any regards. Electricity has to be paid for, supplies and things like that. I remember we were talking at one point during COVID, and we were just catching up, and we were just talking about the amount of money, the increase in building supplies. I remember watching an interview, a national interview with brother Omar. I think it was ABC, just talking about the rate or just the increase of how much it costs to get wood at that point in time. I hope that's balanced out a little bit.
It has. I think it was the World News Tonight interview on ABC7, and prices for wood have gone down. Thankfully, there's still a supply chain issue. That's an international crisis, not just in the States here. But which is one reason why it's a good idea to have different types of businesses that you work on. I don't recommend that you work on 10 different type of businesses when you start off, but once you have some traction to diversify. So we're primarily focused on affordable, but we also do workforce and some market rate as well. So as the market changes, we can take advantage of that and still help solve this massive affordable housing problem in the country.
Okay, well, we got a couple minutes left. Let's see, we have some questions. While we are bringing up some questions, what would you say to somebody who's just starting out, Omar? Maybe they don't have $1 million. Maybe they $45,000, $50,000. They see something over here. Maybe they can get into it. Of course,
get your credit right. Save a few dollars. Get into a home buying program like NACA, like some other FHA home buying programs where you could buy a 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, or 4 unit property. Do 1 or 2 of those, and then look at doing a 8 unit or 10 unit project where you acquire. And I recommend that you don't sell anything if you don't have to, particularly if you're in a major metropolitan area like DC, New York, LA, San Francisco, Miami, Dallas, Atlanta, any number of areas. If you don't necessarily have to, and stack your chips up along the way, and find some friends, join organizations like African American Real Estate Professionals of DC is amazing. African American Real Estate Professionals, period, is an amazing organization. There's a couple of chapters across the country, or join any other real estate organizations so that you can learn, because this is a learning business. If you're not learning every single day, then you really don't want to be in the business. I mean, I learn things every single day, and I expect to learn for the next 30, 40, 50 years until I'm in my grave.
Inshallah. But I think that's important. Now, here's a question. I think we had a question, Satana. Can you bring that up? Oh, Amount says, welcome to the SOS family. Reed says, hello, family. We didn't get to our folks. I shouted them out early. Anybody else we have? Brother Altaf, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Altaf, thank you so much for coming to the show. That's my little brother, JT. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. He's actually in real estate. We got brother Elijah down in Houston. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We got your brother on the spot. Got your brother on the spot. Your brother called me. I ain't calling back, though. No, I'm just kidding. I called him back. Talib, I will be giving you a ring back. What do we say to our youth? I had a situation where I did some production work and ran into a young guy while I was loading up my camera. And he asked me about video work. And we wound up in this conversation about value, how to understand value, how to respect value, how to grow value. What do we say to our youth? Because, we're not reaching them at the rate I think is as effective as we could be. But, success has 2 things. Number one, it's going to either show you how to do it right, or it's going to show you how to do it quick, which a lot of times is wrong. What do we say to our kids about value? Because everything you've talked about on the show has been largely about value. And in business, we say valuations, not evaluations, which is important, but valuations. Being able to look at something and say, at this point in time, it's worth this, but at this point in time, it can be worth this.
Well, I was talking to somebody this morning about my time as a paper boy, right? Growing up in the inner city of Highland Park in the middle of Detroit, delivering paper 7 days a week. When you're a paper boy, for those who don't know, there's no days off. It's a 7-day-a-week thing after school, Monday to Friday. And on
You got to collect
Saturday, that's right. Saturday and Sunday, on the weekends. And, so when you talk about what do we tell them, we need to, teach work ethic. We have to be there as fathers in particular. Like, we have to eliminate these broken families and stay there, for our children so that they can see responsible, fathers and mothers there. And we have to challenge and tell our young people that they can do some amazing things way more than we did. Just like my mom said, we're going to be scientists and engineers. She wasn't a scientist nor an engineer. Yet, 4 of her children, went off and got engineering degrees and 3 law degrees and 1 MBA and all of those things. And so we have to challenge our young people. We got to get them as much opportunity. We have to hold them to high standards, not just our young people, but our adult.
Yeah.
So we talk to our staff all the time and, we tell them, look, mediocrity is not acceptable. Average is not acceptable, right? We have to be operating at a very, very, very high level. And we won't be doing anything as a community unless we're able to figure that out. So whether you're 10 years old or 30 years old or 50 years old, we have to have higher standards for our community. We have to strive for excellence. We have to save our nickels and our dimes and work together and put people on and give contracts to those who look like us in our community, just as other people do.
Can you say that again, please?
We have to give contracts and put people on just like other people do, right? And we have to be unabashedly about it. It might be difficult for us. Our staff might not like it, but it is the right thing to do so that 5, 10, 20 years down the line, we will have successful businesses. We're not going to create wealth in our community, getting a paycheck from somebody. We have to create more businesses. More people got to get K1s and we got to invest, not just in businesses, but in the markets as well, which we didn't even talk about, but which is a very, very important thing that our communities need to do. So,
well, we're going to have you come back on that. Listen, man, believe it or not, brother, we have worked up on a whole hour. It goes quickly. So let me say this, man. As your big brother, as always, I'm proud of you. People don't celebrate. Don't just celebrate what Brother Omar has done. Do that. And I hear this term, we're going to give you your flowers. No, Omar, I'm going to give you your shovel so you can keep building. Nobody want no flowers. We want shovels. We want to be able to build. And I hope, inshallah, this conversation has been beneficial. As I said, man, I'm proud of you. But more importantly, I respect what the grind is. It's easy for people to talk. My mentor, Harry Weber, said this. He said, I love Black people. He said, but here's the problem. He said, we're great at making moves, but horrible at making decisions. And in that space, I like people who are making decisions, who are definitive about what they see. And in some cases, what you don't see. They talk about speaking it to existence. I agree with that statement a lot. But a lot of times it's just the courage. It's courage, it's faith, it's family, it's all these things that help bring things into fruition, man. So on behalf of myself, the Shout Out Show family, our personal relationship, friendship, brotherhood, I appreciate you for coming on the show, man. I know you're a busy guy. We took a whole hour of your time. You can bill me for that hour. You can bill me for the hour because I got $25. And man, it's nothing but love, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Out before you leave, I'm gonna talk to you. Let me wrap up here.
Okay.
So we want to thank Brother Omar for coming on the show. That type of information you just don't get. He came on here and willingly shared stuff. And as my mentor said, the information is free. What you do is your business. So I hope you got something out of it. I mean, I'm ready to go buy something right now. A sandwich, not a building, but I got that mindset. So listen, let's go ahead and wrap up real quick. Let's get to our sponsors. Want to give a shout out to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. If you have $1, you work for it, and you're interested in having your dollar work for you, go to befinancialindependent.com or call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. And on the flip, if you're interested in getting a quality graduate or doctoral level education for Islamic education, go to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School, offering programs in Islamic leadership, Islamic studies, Islamic education, and they have one of the best programs, Masters of Divinity, with a focus in Muslim chaplaincy in the country. Go to bayanonline.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org. You guys, you've been tremendous. Shout out to Sister Satana working the back. As always, that was our Saturday Spotlight. I enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it. And until we see you next month on Saturday, I'm Preacher Moss. This is SOS. Take care. See you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say, I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the Shout Out Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go, because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.